Hello, good people of YouTube. Today we're going to conclude our mini-series about AIOps Explained, and in there the User Interface Extensions Toolkit. This is part 3 of 3 from our trilogy. And again, as within the other parts, Joshua Suckling is our guest speaker. And what are we going to talk about? Well, we're talking about dashboarding capabilities within the Cloud Pak. You have two possibilities to go ahead. One is you could go with the included entitlement of Cognos Analytics, which is a separate package that you can download and install and use within the Cloud Pak for AIOps. As well as you could go this way, as it is explained in this trilogy, the User Interface Extension Toolkit, which is available via GitHub. So this also needs to be downloaded, installed separately to AIOps. In the first two parts, we went through the GitHub repos, where to get it, getting it started, download the whole thing, cluster setups, installation details. In the second part, we ran you through a sample dashboard on how it's done and what the details are, how to deploy this particular piece. And within this piece, the last and final piece, we are going to take a detailed look into the toolkit. And with that, I'd like to introduce you also to a community blog, which is done by Zane. He talks you through the same topic, so you have it in writing as well, with all the nitty-gritty details and links, and you can copy and paste the tools and links which are in there written down. And so far, now we are prepped for the final stage. Joshua, the stage is yours. Take us away, please.
Hello and welcome to part 3 of my AIOps UI Extension Template mini-series. It's also known as the Dashboarding Toolkit. As you saw in part 2, I gave a quick demo of this custom dashboard that I built based around the idea of monitor boxes. I'm not going to show the example again, but what we want to talk about now is how did I get here? What have I got under the hood in order to show this on my AIOps UI? We're going to go back into VS Code. We left it here with the roots file. If we go back to the index.js file, and again, go and watch videos 1 and 2 for a bit of background. But yeah, we'll start here. And effectively what we've got is this function at the bottom, which is registering a custom panel. We called it monitor boxes, and it points to this monitor boxes JS component that I've got here. This component is effectively pointing to a panel, and you'll see I've named it -js because originally we were working in TypeScript, but for my example I've just used plain JavaScript. So if I go back into panels, you'll see my monitor boxes JS panel.js. So if I open that up, effectively what this panel does is it literally just creates this React element using my monitor box collection component. You could do other things inside the panel component. So if we look at the workflow example, this actually sets up a query beforehand, before creating the element, and passes that down. And I think similar things are done in the other examples. In my case, I actually used the query directly in the component. But yeah, this is just where the actual React component is, or element rather, is created. This then links into monitor box collection, and we can click straight through in VS Code and it'll take us there. So inside, you'll see where it is. It's inside the source components and then this monitor box JS folder that I've got a few bits and pieces in here, but monitor box collection is the top level component, and effectively it's a React based component. It is using a couple of things from our UI sort of library, the user Cora state, for example. This is part of our sort of Cora UI interface that connects our panels together. It does a few bits and pieces. It's got various bits of state for the filters we've selected, also the filters we've parsed, because the filters we load from the back end we actually need to pass through so we can use for queries. Yeah, some state around refetching. Effectively what it will do is it will go and make a query for the alert filters. I'm not actually using the loading state and error state, etc. But if you remember, when I loaded the page was just blank initially. So I could make use of the loading state to create a loading spinner or something. It then takes the data in a use effect here and then processes that, and it's using a particular function here, condition set to API query, that I import from one of my utilities folders, and that effectively turns it into a query we can use directly against the API. We've got a simple effect here that just sets up a timer, and this is just to force a refetch for all of the monitor boxes. This monitor box collection is a collection of monitor boxes, so it makes sense to hold that state at the top here and manage that refetch so that they will all refresh simultaneously. And then we've also got the click handler here for the monitor boxes, so that's using this function we've got, set URL parameters, that will just update the URL parameters we want to use, and then it'll create a new route using the URL parameters we want, and then we'll use this function window.open to open a new tab. And then we've got a couple of fairly straightforward components. So the first one is a multi-select, and that was the multi-select you saw at the top here. This actually comes from Carbon, and if you're not familiar with Carbon, it's a very useful resource for React components, and also, I guess, a design language, that's what it's known as. So you can get lots of bits and pieces from fonts, colors, right through to full-fledged React-based components, as said. So this multi-select is pretty simple. It takes the list of the past filters that we got earlier, then turns them into simple spans that are just the list items, the strings you see here. The checkboxes, they get added as part of the component itself, so I don't need to worry about that. And then I just need to feed in an on-change handler, and also this selected items property, which is for actually managing which are the selected filters that the user's got. It's what we'd call a controlled component, so I'm managing that state myself here, including the setting and sort of handing down of it to the component itself. Once I've selected one, it will run that set function here using whichever ones came through the selection. With that, once it's got those selected filters, you can see that's used further down here, and effectively it just maps every single one of those selected filters into a new monitor box, and that is a component that we've built ourselves that we'll look at in a second. One thing I'll say is that I've got some custom styling here. You'll notice the class name, and then I've got a drop down section, the collection section. If I open monitorboxes.scss, you can see I've got an SCSS file here with various bits and pieces. And you will notice as well at the top that I'm using, again, Carbon styling. So I use some of the sort of stock Carbon colors that we use within the product, so I can get a similar look and feel. So this grey 10, for example, I think somewhere else I was going to use blue, but I can show a change of that in a second actually. But yeah, otherwise it's just using sort of standard styling properties that I've chosen myself. But again, if you want to use Carbon templates and such, you could. So yeah, we've got some styling, we've got our top level component. If we then dive down into monitor box, this has just got a few bits and pieces I need for the options for the chart, for example. Here I can define what do I want to show in my axes. For example, the bottom axis, I don't show any ticks, so I don't show any of the numbers at the bottom, or rather the words for the different severities. I know what each of these bars represent because they're coloured to match the severities, so I can just remove that by setting that to blank array. The fill colour, as mentioned, I'm setting those depending on the different severity, and I've got that sort of sev colours property here that represents the different AIOps severity colours. I've also got some initial data just to make everything blank to begin with, and also the loading state we add in there later on too. We've also got a few functions just for getting the highest and the lowest values, because we'll need those for our summary rows. And then we've got the sort of component itself that takes in the title we want to show for each monitor box, the filter clause, so what's this actual filter clause that we're going to use and pull the alert counts for, and then it's got the click handler and also the should refetch state. So when the top level component says refetch, then this will go away, make a query for the summary data again, and update the box. Again, we've got some more state here. The query, as we mentioned, this query is going off and fetching the actual summary data for that particular box, so it will just get a count of the different severities, or the alerts for each severity, and then that's turned into a collection of the summaries, so the total, highest and lowest, that's this section at the top here. We've got another effect here for the refetch handling, another effect here for setting the monitor box option. So yeah, I mentioned the loading state. when the data is loading, the monitor box will go into, the chart will go into a sort of blank loading state, and then you'll see it sort of re-render when the refresh is finished. Just to save time, I'm not going to wait for it now, but you may have seen it happen before where this thing sort of expands into its full state. And then moving on, we've got another effect here. This is just a sort of handler for when the data is loaded. It will then go through and sort of process the monitor box data that we need, using all the different summary data points. Then we've got a couple of sort of helper functions here for getting the summary rows. So you've got the entire summary rows, obviously one for the total, the highest and the lowest, and then I've got another little mini function here that will render each individual row, and I can just feed into that, which title and which value I want. Obviously for the first row it's just showing a simple numerical value, but for the other two I'm passing in an icon component. The highest sev icon and the lowest sev icon, these are these two lines here, and these are quite important. So what we're doing here is we're using a function that we've got as part of our Cora interface. As I mentioned, this is what we use for sort of rendering our panels in AIOps, or at least in the sort of alerts, incidents, things like that pages. I've exposed this function for use as a utility, and it just means I can give it any severity integer, and then it will turn back and give me the actual icon that I need for use. So it's a really handy function for this custom dashboard, and you should be able to use this too one way or another. I'm not sure if at the time of you viewing this whether or not it will be available, but we will provide a means one way or another so that you'll be able to get the AIOps severity icons. And then lastly, the sort of main return function. This is just going through and effectively rendering the whole monitor box. So we've got our sort of title section, which is just the filter. We've got that summary section with the summary rows function to actually build it out. And then we've got a simple bar chart. And again, this is from Carbon. All it takes is the options and the data. And if we look at the imports at the top, you'll see I've pulled this from Carbon Charts React. And it's pretty straightforward. If you look at Carbon Charts, go and search for it on Google, you'll be able to find lots of different examples of charts you can use. And all of them have pretty simple configuration. For this, for this bar chart, it's got these options, most of which are optional that I've chosen, and then it's got this data, and it's pretty simple. I've got the 6 different groups, and obviously if I wanted to change that, I could configure it so that it was showing different resources or whatever, and then the actual values for each. That's pretty much it. Just got the prop types of the component at the bottom as well. That's it. That's our component from top to bottom. Obviously, this is what it results in, and if we wanted to customize that, we could. So let's just do a quick example. So I was talking about the background color here and the summary. So let's just introduce those styles again. I'm going to save it, and now we've got 2 options. Now, if we want to do things the slow way, what I could do is if I just run deploy again, we'll kick this off, and then I'll show you something else in the meantime whilst we wait for this to actually finish uploading to the cluster. So what you can also do is actually run a local development environment that will sort of run a local instance of your build and then proxy the rest of the requests to your cluster. So if you go back to the getting started doc here, you can see that you've got this option to run the examples locally. So we're going to try and do that now. Now, as you can see in the background, it has done the deployment, so we'll be able to go back and load it on the cluster in a second. But until then, let's just begin. I'm going to clear this and we'll start fresh. We're now going to do that. So if we type npm start, as it says here in the instructions, this is now going to start the local dev server. Now this is using the Webpack config that was detailed in here. I think I mentioned in video 1 that I'm actually using a different port just so I don't clash with other stuff running on my laptop. So if we go back, and there we go, now it says Webpack has successfully compiled this. So if we go back into the output here, you'll see it's actually spat out the different routes we can go to. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to go back into the same browser. There we go. Not sure what happened the first time there. We just had a second refresh and that seems to have loaded things absolutely fine. So now we're looking at a local copy of our monitor boxes component as we saw before, and then we can just quickly grab, let's take all alerts, and now you can see the changed background. If from here, with it running, it becomes very quick to make changes. So, okay, let's say, do you know what? Actually, I'm not sure about that background color. I can quickly save that, and then instantly you'll see the change. It will hot reload and apply that. Obviously, the white font now doesn't make sense. So again, I can quickly save that, and you'll see the change appear on screen. So it's very quick to sort of prototype and try new ideas out. But okay, let's say we wanted to make something a bit different. So let's go into monitor boxes. Where's our summary section? Let's say, do you know what, the summaries, I'm not really interested in the highest and lowest seb. I can see that from the chart itself. So I'm just going to temporarily remove them. Again, I can save that. You'll see Webpack rebuilds. And then in a second, if you're making code changes, like changes to JavaScript files, etc., it will reload, versus style changes, which will just appear instantly. And there you go. You can see the change. So after a quick automatic refresh, it will now just show the total. As said, it's very simple to chop and change and prototype. The only thing you will need to do now, though, is if you really like that change and you've decided, you know what, I want to put that on the cluster edition as well for everyone else. If I just skip back through my commands and go to deploy, I can run deploy again, and then we'll see that change in the cluster itself. We'll just have to wait a minute, obviously, for it to propagate through and for the updates to be made. So there we go, it's initiating the upload. There we go, building, updating, looking good. So we'll just give that a second. Now in the docs here, we do mention that you can build your own custom pages. I think I sort of talked through most of that before anyway, and it does give some brief guidance. All of this sort of guidance and such may change over time, and if we're getting lots of use cases from clients and yourselves, then yeah, we'd happily like to extend this further. You could build all sorts with this. The opportunities are endless. Obviously, we expose a lot of queries. There's lots of data you can get out already. And again, that could be extended further if there's certain things you're interested in. It's a great starting point. You'll see there is a Grafana guide here as well that will show you how you could use a Grafana page as part of it. If I just quickly go back, so we're in the local one here. I'm just going to close that and go back to the main one. I'm going to hit refresh. Okay, and now we've got the filters, so let's just choose that Vetus one we used before, and you'll see now we've got that change in the cluster as we required. Okay guys, so look, thank you very much for watching. That's the end of the mini series now. Obviously, if you're interested in more use cases or examples, please reach out. Also, the repository that we use for this, as said, there's going to be some changes pushed up to there in due course. But if you want to see more things, if you want to use it yourselves for particular use cases, please reach out and we'll do our best to help you. All right, thanks and have a great day.
Thank you so much. That was really, really cool. This concludes our mini-series, and before we go, I'd like to highlight that we have documentation available. So if you want to go into the IBM docs in there within the Cloud Pak for Apps version 4.10.0, you do have this particular page. You can find this particular page by searching within the documentation for dashboards, and within the shown links you will find this page, which has an embedded link into AIOps. And as you open up this Git repository, you will see this kind of code pieces and snippets of Joshua. And if you want to participate in that, please feel welcome. Also, if you want to provide feedback about these things, you're more than welcome to do and participate in this kind of development effort. So, well done, all done. Thank you for watching this mini-series, and see you another time in AIOps Explained. And Joshua, thank you very much for providing all these levels of details and insights as you've done. Thank you so far, and bye for now. See you. Bye.